Welcome back to ESBR Boxing. It's a pleasure to have with me Elliot Grigg, and we're here for another big fight breakdown. Big fight just around the corner at this stage in the super middleweight division. Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez. Elliot, before we get into the nitty gritty, the most important question in these trying times: how are you?
It could have been anything. I thought you were about to ask me to chip in for your electric bill there, but like, I'm struggling to pay my own, Danny. Yeah, no, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm well. Looking forward to this fight. Actually, this is it's one of those fights you see sort of coming on the horizon, isn't it? You think that's a standout in the calendar. Looking forward to it and looking forward to breaking it down with you, brother.
Yeah, coming on the horizon. It's been on the horizon for a while. It's one of these fights that's had about three announcements. Whatever reason, getting pushed back and pushed back. But touch wood, I think around mate. It finally seems to be happening. First question to you, really. I think this fight was first sort of mentioned. The names have been put together a while, but in terms of a concrete plan, I think it would have came about sort of last summer, going into autumn, obviously when Plant defeated Anthony Durrell. When you first sort of heard of this fight and these two names being mentioned together, what were your initial thoughts?
I think within this division, I know obviously like people were talking about Canelo when they fight Benavidez, and the being sort of the name they wanted to see him in with. But I think when you look at the sort of rankings and some of the guys that they've fought, for me, this is a sort of standout fight in that division that doesn't actually that doesn't involve Canelo. So yeah, I was really keen for it, to be perfectly honest. I think we'll get onto it, I'm sure, no doubt. But Caleb Plant was one of those guys. He impressed me against Canelo last time as well. And I think and everyone wants to see Benavidez sort of tested a bit more as well. So I think yeah, for me, I'm excited through those two themes really.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. Caleb Plant did give a very good account of himself against Canelo. For my money, the best performance of any of the three champions Canelo beat on his way to undisputed at super middle. Benavidez, we forget, sort of been a world champion himself, lost it on the scales, never defeated. And as you alluded to there, a lot of people would say he's potentially Canelo's toughest challenge at super middleweight. And even sort of like wee rumblings of Canelo ducking him, which I personally don't agree with, but it's interesting to have these conversations. Just going to put it to you bluntly, at the super middleweight division, we'll take Canelo aside because he's got all four belts. Are they the best two super middleweights outside of Canelo?
I think so. Yeah, I think when you look through, I mean, if you could throw in maybe, I know he's not necessarily a standout super middleweight, obviously with size wise, but even if he had someone like Andrade, for me, if coming up in that would be quite a good fight. Someone like him versus Caleb Plant would be a good fight. Actually, I'd quite like to see that as well. But yeah, I think so, frankly. I mean, other names you've got around there, what like John Ryder, of the British interest, Moral, those sort of guys. So I think, I actually do think so. Yeah, like I said, Caleb Plant for me did equip himself. I totally agree. He equipped himself better out of Saunders and Smith in fighting Canelo. Surprisingly so, I expected it to be over a lot sooner than it was. So yeah, given that and given the style of Benavidez, this is a standout in the division that doesn't include Canelo for me.
Andrade is an interesting name. You mentioned obviously up in super middleweight and now signed PBC where these fighters are. So another interesting name to add to the conversation. We were chatting a bit off camera or before recording about resumes, and they've actually got similar resumes in a way. And you made a good point. Neither of them have that sort of standout win. Both obviously fought Durrell, Plant more recently, Benavidez most recently, David Lemieux, a very old David Lemieux, obviously made fairly light work of him. I think it was 3 rounds. Despite the similarities, who would you say has potentially got the deeper resume coming in? We'll say in terms of wins, we'll leave out the Canelo fight. We'll say in terms of wins, who would you say edges it?
I think for me, when I was looking through this, because I totally agree with what you were saying when I was saying off camera, like they seem to have like the Lemieux one a bit over the head at that point. Obviously, even coming Caleb Plant, you could say Durrell would have got Durrell at a better time than obviously Benavidez. So I think the fact that Benavidez fought Durrell probably earlier, and it was what 3 years before Caleb Plant did, maybe that's a kind of standout win on both their CVs. But other than that, it does look they do need essentially, don't they? To be honest with you, whoever wins this, it's a standout win on their CV as far as I'm concerned. I think, I just think they're just edging probably slightly Benavidez simply because of getting hold of Durrell earlier. A more peak of fresher version of Durrell is kind of where I'd look at in choosing the margins there. But it's probably not as clear cut as simply saying that. But it is quite close, like you say. It needs a marquee win, both of them.
I would agree with you. I think the fact Benavidez fought a slightly fresher Durrell probably tips it slightly in his favour. but as we both sort of said, definitely lacking that world-class win. Now, I've not looked at the odds. I'm assuming David Benavidez is a favourite going into this. Let's say that's the case. Is that something you'd agree with?
Yes, it is. It is something I'd agree with slightly. And the reason that's the case really is, I suppose, just because, I mean, there's these slight physical advantages, but I think just like style wise, and this is why we'll probably come on to this, why I'd be excited to see him fight Canelo. But I just think the sort of style that he has, but a relentlessness coming forward, for me will grind down Caleb Plant eventually. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, frankly. I think both of them in a way obviously will stand and fight. But I think, yeah, obviously the KO percentage, what is it, 23 KOs or something? I think there's only 3 people that have gone the distance with him. I just think he'll come forward and he'll get to Plant eventually. But yeah, I make him favourite. Like you said, never been defeated. Obviously, Caleb Plant has only been defeated the once. But I think yeah, like you said, with no real standout names, I still lean towards Benavidez.
I would agree with you, and I would agree with your assessment of how the fight will play out stylistically. I think Plant could definitely bag a few of the early rounds. Very slick boxer, very good technically, very good jab. But Benavidez so fresh, like still only 26, and just like a relentless body puncher. And I think he would potentially get the Plant down the stretch, maybe to stop him, or maybe to pick up enough of the early round, or the late rounds, I should say, to get a decision. But great fight. Let's say hypothetically, because this has been billed as winner gets Canelo type thing. I'm sure with both these fighters being with PBC and Showtime and Al Heyman, Eddie Hearn would have a lot to say about that. But let's say in the hypothetical that we'll say Benavidez first, because obviously he's not fought Canelo before. Say Benavidez defeats Plant, that we both seem to edge towards. How do you see a fight between David Benavidez and Canelo going?
I see it going bloody well from a pay-per-view perspective, and no, I think style-wise, like we say, it's like, I mean, it's Benavidez is what, 6'2", so I think he's slightly smaller than Callum Smith, but he's relentlessly coming forward, and like you said, just like merciless. After that fight with Durrell, he was just roughing him up repeatedly. He was only slightly taller than Durrell as well, so I just see him. I see him basically coming forward. I see him stalking down Canelo. I see Canelo. We've seen Canelo, to be fair to Canelo, we've seen him, obviously, he can kind of do everything. We saw him as a sort of pressure fighter almost against Callum Smith, against a bigger man, like really sort of forcing Callum Smith back stylistically. But then we've also seen Canelo against, Triple G and other guys like Nate, literally just sort of sit back a bit and pot shot. Also a bit against Bivol. But I think it'll be similar. It'll be a similar fight, actually, in that respect. I think this time Canelo won't be meeting Benavidez front foot to front foot. I think he'll be kind of pushed back, actually, and I think that's why I'm kind of so intrigued by it. I almost feel like it'll be Canelo. I think Canelo, I'm going to limb here and say I think Canelo's a better boxer than Benavidez style wise, but I also think that just the relentlessness and the fact that he's really 4 or 5 inches taller than him or something outrageous, make for a hell of a fight. So considering what we've seen with Canelo up against like the bigger men, like we say Smiths and Bivels, to see him in with someone who's slightly more relentless, then that will be really exciting. I think for me, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I think Benavidez is a really, really tough fight for Canelo at this stage. I think Canelo's lost a step. I think he looked like he'd lost a step against Golovkin. I think that version of Golovkin's there to be. Canelo won the fight well, won 10 rounds, but never really looked like stopping Golovkin. Golovkin, 41, 42. I think Golovkin's there to be stopped. Murata had him hurt to the body, probably more so than Canelo ever did. And he just doesn't seem to be the same fighter that even the success Plant was having. Certainly the fighter that beat Saunders and Callum Smith was, pound for pound one at that time, but I don't think he's that fighter anymore. And I think David Benavidez, he'll have, as you alluded to, the physical advantages, the work rate, young, fresh. I think he could stop Canelo. And I think Plant might actually prove to be stylistically a tougher fight than Canelo would be, just because Plant's a lot more similar physically to Benavidez, a better back foot boxer than Canelo, but we'll not go too deep into it because obviously he's got to get through Plant first. Just to wrap up,
do you think, just to pick up on that, just say, do you think Canelo is that miles on the clock? Do you think there's a reason possibly why he's lost a step there? I mean, he's only 32, so not obviously that old, but he's had I think he's had something like, 60 odd fights already. Do you reckon it's just simply like wear and tear that's kind of taken its toll?
Mate, he's been boxing professionally since he was 15. It's a bit ridiculous when you think about it. No, the opponents at that level when he's starting are worse than you'd even see prospects getting over here. But like that length of time to be boxing 17 years as a professional, going up and down the weights constantly, and he's been in tough fights. There's nothing you would say like a proper war, but tough, long distance fights. Like 3 fights we got out of Golovkin, 2 which were a very, very good version of Golovkin. So combination of a few things, and I just think that freshness of Benavidez, and like he got backed up a few times against Bivol, and Bivol's not a puncher. Benavidez is a bigger man physically than Bivol. And he could fight at light heavyweight easy, and I think that's a really, really tough fight for Canelo. But as in, look, we could honestly go on all night. Like I had to stop myself going on like a I'm going to put you on the spot here. Time of recording, we're just under 3 weeks out. I'm not sure when this will go out, but as we're recording this, I'm sure there'll be more videos to discuss the fight. What way are you leaning in terms of a prediction? Specific as you can make it for me.
I think I'm going to look Benavidez, and I'm going to look Benavidez KO. Simple reason that I don't think, like you said, I think Caleb Plant, good stylistically, you can see him nicking a couple of the early rounds, good back foot boxer. But having said that, he's got 13, I think it's 13 KO, so about 22 victories, so less than 50% KO. Stoppage rate, obviously, Benavidez has got 23 out of 26, so it would suggest, I suppose, that Plant's not got the power essentially to keep Benavidez off him, and the style that he has, that relentlessness coming forward. And I just think he'll tire him and he'll get him to him somewhere sort of 8 plus, I think, somewhere to probably 9, somewhere around 9 to 10 for me if I was had to put some money on a round. But yeah, late stoppage, I think, for Benavidez for me.
I agree completely with you. I think he'll stop in the last 3 rounds, potentially from behind on the cards. As you say, like Plant just doesn't have the power to keep him off, and the only way he wins this fight is if he can keep his feet for long enough, so he doesn't need to have the power to keep him off. And whilst he's maybe slightly slicker than Benavidez, I don't think he's slick enough to stop him. He's not slick enough to put in like a Saunders v Yilmaz where he doesn't land a glove on him. Like even in the rounds, Plant's winning, he'll like be taking shots, and I just think Benavidez will be able to slow the feet down and probably stop him late, to be honest. That'd be my prediction. But it's interesting. Like I would probably need to watch a bit more tape, to be honest. I've only really watched like 2 or 3 Caleb Plant fights in their entirety. So, but as I say, we could go on for ages and ages. It's a great fight. I would say probably, unless there's something big I'm missing here, but one of the best fights stateside so far this calendar year. Certainly one of the biggest. But we'll leave it there. If you just made it this far, thanks very much. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. Like we've drilled all the time, but putting out so much content here. Elliot, thanks a million, mate, for coming on. Any last parting thoughts for the viewers before we sign off?
Nothing else other than to say I concur with everything you said there, Danny. Yeah, one of the best fights stateside, and I'm an elderly man, but I'll be staying up for it. That's how much obviously it piques the interest. Danny, obviously you're younger and fresher face. You stay out for more of these than I do. You will look like me eventually, and while you can stay up for it easier, please do. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for watching. Check out the channel obviously as well. We'll have other stuff obviously in relation to this fight. But yeah, thank you guys for watching.
Cheers, folks.